You are listening to Contesting Wrestling, Minisode, I'm going to say 24.
Yeah.
25.
We'll go with that.
At this point, it would be out of character if I remembered what episode we were doing, so I feel like this is just keeping in with the tradition. We are, if you are a new listener, these minisodes are little things that we drop on Fridays in between main feed episodes where we talk about things that are currently happening, either in wrestling or just in our own lives or whatever. So these take place in our reality and timeline as we understand it, whereas the main feed episodes exist outside of normal human space-time. So it is currently April 1st. We are continuing to record this under, remote quarantine conditions. We're all at our own respective houses.
In the minisodes, we also reflect on whatever regular episode came out that week. Because they exist in a completely different universe, parallel universe, we want to let people in this universe know what was going on.
I do want to say it is April 1st. It is not April Fool's Day. I went ahead and disqualified April Fool's Day since I can't ref right now. I'm just reffing life.
I've only seen one April Fool's post, and it was wrestling related.
I've seen a couple that were good. They're all very lighthearted this year. There's not a lot of, big ones. Lil Nas X posted at, 4 a.m. in the morning, where the hoes at? And then posted, 2 minutes later, just kidding, I'm gay again. That was pretty funny.
An indie promotion called VXS, something like Violence and Suffering.
Yeah, Violence and Suffering. I think they run in Queens.
They posted that Action Bronson had purchased their company, which is not... Well, I mean, they posted a supposed TMZ article about it, and when I searched for it, I could not actually find the article, so then I remembered it was April 1st.
Sidney Bacabella, what did he say that was funny? It's slipping my mind, Doc. He made a good one.
Oh, what did Sidney say? He did make a good one,
right,
and I can't remember it.
He said that Cam Zagami has a very tiny penis.
Yeah, but he put it go follow Sidney Bacabella on Twitter.
If you're not following
clever.
Sidney Bacabella on Twitter, you've made a mistake and should correct that mistake.
Yeah. Anyway, the point is, don't do any actual pranks. Your usual battery of here's an internet false article. Those can be funny if they're done right, but I haven't seen too many big pranks, so that's by the time anybody hears this, it's over. So
yeah.
There you go.
Misinformation is so dangerous right now.
Yeah, it really is.
That we really can't be fucking around with that.
I do want to say this episode is supposed to be about squash matches. However, life is currently a squash match against humanity, so we're on topic.
Yep.
Well, I mean, the heat is happening now. I hope that we do mount a comeback eventually. Hopefully it's like that Daniel Bryan-Brock Lesnar match.
Yeah,
where
that
it
was a
seemed
good one, yeah.
completely hopeless for the first half of the match until Bryan started to make his comeback all of a sudden.
I feel like it's going to be more like their other match that they had where Brock just destroyed Daniel Bryan, and then it later on turned out that Daniel Bryan was letting himself be
that was the same match.
destroyed in the hopes of becoming stronger, and that's actually very literally what all of our leaders are doing.
No, he made a comeback eventually.
Yeah,
and
he did.
It looked like he might win the match for a little bit.
But didn't he not come back? Didn't he just get crushed?
Evan clearly doesn't remember most of the things that have happened.
I do not.
See, what I'm thinking is going to happen is, remember when John Cena was so happy because things were finally going good for him and he had his WrestleMania match against The Undertaker, and The Undertaker just beat the shit out of him for 5 minutes? I think it's going to be more like that.
Yeah, hopefully we're The Undertaker in that situation.
Ben, do you remember that one?
We talked about that recently.
It was just a couple years ago. Yeah, I don't think we've shown Evan that one.
No.
Have we done an Undertaker episode yet?
Not specifically.
We should.
We have watched a couple of Taker matches.
I have been strategizing for the Undertaker episode, thinking about what should be included in that.
Have we shown him? I would assume we have by now when Undertaker lost.
No, we haven't done that one yet.
No, I don't think so.
He hasn't seen that? Oh, my God. It's not a good match.
It's
but
not. Taker gets concussed.
In terms of historic, it's one of the most historic matches in the company's history. in wrestling history.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting in terms of like the aesthetics of wrestling and wrestling criticism, because while by most measures it's not a great match, it is one of the greatest moments in the history of wrestling.
Let's put that in the thought bank and not say too much more on it.
Yeah.
Because that's something that we should show Evan.
Indeed.
Oh yes.
That's something Evan needs to watch.
One day for sure.
All right, so in terms of corrections, squash is a fruit, Evan, not a vegetable. I mean, I guess it's
Wait,
Really?
it's a fruit?
yeah, it has
It has
seeds.
seeds in it.
All right, like that's why tomatoes are technically fruits.
I mean,
too.
I feel like people do not recognize it as a like you might prescriptively be telling me that it is a fruit, but I believe that descriptively it is absolutely a vegetable.
Except it has seeds. And that's part of the description.
Right, but I'm saying that society has decided that the role of squash is the role of a vegetable.
So it's like conventionally
Yes, yeah,
vegetable.
like we regardless of its actual classification, as we understand it, it is a vegetable. So
Look, I don't know. I love spaghetti squash. We'll go with that.
We also have to recognize there's, two different levels of vegetable, because in the classification dividing everything into animal, vegetable, mineral, I guess everything organic, all fruits and vegetables fall under vegetable in that scheme of classification.
See, now you're just being a jerk, I think. You're not wrong, of
Well, I
course.
Guys, Ben's a
of course.
doctor.
Thank you, Professor.
Wait, a professor. Excuse me. Professor, Dr.
I'm both.
Abelson.
Anyway, we had a real good time watching all these squash matches, and that's a thing, because most of what we have covered, just increasingly over time, is like the greatest matches of all time by the greatest wrestlers of all time, and like that's only some of what makes wrestling wrestling. Like a lot of it is like it's like just watching the climactic fight scenes in action movies. You don't get all the rest of it, and like you don't want to watch the rest of it without seeing the climactic fight scene, but just the scene by itself. You don't get the build-up. You don't get the worth. These squash matches put worth on people.
Speaking of which, we talked about how squash matches have gone out of favor, that it used to be that you got mostly squash matches on TV. I remember Jim Cornette lamenting that, title matches, world title matches especially, should never happen on TV for free. You should always make people pay to go to the show or for the pay-per-view or whatever to see the world title match. And now we get world title matches all the time on TV. I mean, not all the time, but somewhat frequently. I think there's something to that, though, to them sort of being devalued in so
The
far as they're more
Universal
frequent.
title is just a joke.
Well, yeah, that actually gets defended much fewer times at all. It's like 3 or 4 times a year.
I mean, it's not so much as a joke. It's like cursed.
Yeah, I mean, when Lesnar has whatever title Lesnar has right now, he has the WWE title.
He has
not
the
Universal.
WWE title. Well, to your point, that match he had with Kofi Kingston on SmackDown, they built it up real heavy that it was the first time Lesnar had wrestled on SmackDown in years.
Lesnar himself is the
Right.
the special attraction. Yeah.
Let's not relive that horrible memory of that match for me.
one thing that I thought was interesting getting into the squash matches was, Doc, you were saying that, we've mostly just been doing like the greatest matches of all time with some exceptions for the bad matches and stuff like that. But, we hadn't really dipped our toes into all of the rest of wrestling, which is a thing that I'm generally afraid to do because from what I understand, most of the rest of it is bad. And so finding the stuff that's not the best, but also is not bad, that seems like a complex challenge.
Say it is kind of a challenge. And once again, like the podcast isn't just get Evan to like wrestling. Although the more we watch it, the more good stuff that you've identified as stuff that you like. I think the more you learn about the art form in general, the more of a palette you may have for the stuff that isn't exceptional. Because, I mean, bad wrestling can also be big main events. That's not what I'm talking about. It's just like you enjoyed enough of the concept of the squash stuff. Now, a squash that lasts 15 minutes might not be so good, but, dude comes up, beats the hell out of a guy for 3 minutes. He looks cool. Yeah, it's like a Looney Tunes cartoon or something.
And one of the other things here is it's not just getting an appreciation for the stuff that isn't the best, But it's people debate about this kind of thing with life in general. It's like, well, if you had to suffer through more of the mediocre stuff, or if you were exposed to, the sort of weekly grind that gets paid off with the big matches, you would appreciate the big matches that much more. People say, well, you got to go through adversity and suffering and hardship in order to appreciate the rewards at the end of that.
Right, but I already experienced that with life.
Right.
Right? Like, I'm already living life and have to deal with that massive flaw in the life design. So then to also do that with wrestling still seems like a tall order to me.
I believe it's referred to as a slow build.
Well, I know
Yeah.
you can dig the concept in other art forms. Like, aren't you a Dark Souls fan? Aren't those games like super hard?
Oh, no, you seem to have backed me into a corner where I have to agree with you in order to maintain philosophical consistency. I would say, okay,
Oosh.
yeah, because it is sort of like part of what I really love about the Dark Souls games is because they kind of force you to think about your relationship with video games in general while you're playing them, because there's a point where it's just so constantly brutal and frustrating, but still always feels like fair in its own way. Like it's brutal and hellish, but it doesn't feel like the game is cheating against you. It feels like it's your own failures. And it really does make you go like, why do I play video games? Why do I like this? What am I trying to get out of this in a like weird meta introspective way that maybe isn't what most people go to video games for, and also is not what a lot of people go to Dark Souls for. A lot of people just like to play it, and they don't put that much, and they don't obsessively put thought into it like I do.
Same with
But
wrestling.
yeah, I mean, and I guess a lot of it is to experience when you get the highs, they're so wonderful and so satisfying, and they only come as a result of all those hours you spend going like, the fuck am I even doing with this?
Right.
Why am I doing this?
I play games where you pick flowers and dig holes, and your neighbor is an ostrich.
Welcome to Animal Crossing.
Tom Nook is a capitalist.
I mean, those also absolutely have value.
I mean, can I just say in defense of Tom Nook, he gives you interest-free loans that you can pay back as slowly as you like.
That is a plus. He just kind of builds you a house and is like, pay me for it, whenever.
Well, Tom Nook's interest comes in the form of social capital. Like, he gives you these interest-free loans and stuff, so then that way you start being like, oh, like, hey, Tom Nook's not a bad guy, and, that's what it is that he's just cultivating friendships and respect through this power structure.
All right. That's interesting.
Speaking of video games, it's pretty cool that Treachery in Beatdown City just came out.
Oh, yeah.
I think I first contributed to that Kickstarter like a decade ago.
Yeah, I think it was 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, our friend Sean designed this awesome looking game. I haven't been able to play it yet because I have a Mac.
Yeah, I got it on the Switch. Even though I probably could have just downloaded the Steam code, I wanted it on the Switch. I've played a bunch of it so far. It's a lot of fun. It manages to be familiar yet unique, Something that's actually very difficult to pull off. I mean, it's been a labor of love for Sean Allen for a number of years. Check it out. Fully endorsed here.
It's like a side scroller in the style of like Final Fight or something like that, right?
Yeah, closer to like Double Dragon, except it's not just a straight like walk to the left and beat him up, or walk to the right and beat him up. There's a bunch of RPG elements, but also it's not straight RPG either. Like, you can walk up to the enemy and hit the button to punch them, or hit the other button to bring up a menu and start stringing together combos. It sounds a little weird, but like once you do it for 5 minutes, it becomes second nature.
It's like Final Fight fantasy.
Yeah, there you go.
Final Fantasy Fight.
I like it. Okay, I have a question for Doc and
What's up?
Katie. What does "don't bump in the Dumbo" mean?
Doc, you take that one.
All right, so the phrase is mostly used as an impression of Johnny Rods. I wouldn't say that Johnny Rods was a jobber. He would hurt me. Johnny Rods did. He was the policeman. He would lose matches and report how the guys were. He would put other people over very well. And when I was training under him, and he still does this, I believe, Most of the matches at his shows, or I should say most of the shows that he puts on in Brooklyn, would have a battle royal in it. And it's in Dumbo, Brooklyn, the neighborhood Dumbo. And he would call the battle royal the Rumbo and Dumbo.
Down under the Manhattan Bridge overpass.
That's right. Gleason's
Dumbo.
Gym just moved a couple blocks from its original location, but it is still down under the Manhattan Bridge overpass. Anyway, one of the rules in a battle royal, which you see them break this in the WWE because the guys are real professionals and they know what they're doing, but especially if you're thrown in a battle royal as a new wrestler to get your feet wet, you don't want to take any bumps. If the ring is full of inexperienced guys who don't know what the hell they're doing, and you take a big old wacky bump that you still don't really know how to bump very well in the middle of the ring, somebody's probably going to step on you, or somebody else is going to fall on you, or you're going to trip a bunch of people who like aren't under their own feet yet, and
Or you're going to bump wrong.
yeah, or you're just going to bump wrong and hurt yourself. So unless you're one of the last few people in the ring and you're doing something dramatic, don't bump in the battle royal. No bump in the Dumbo pie. You just, go to the corners, go to the ropes, try and get people to throw over, throw a few strikes, appeal to the crowd, have some fun. The battle royal is supposed to be fun.
I love battle royals. They're some of my favorite shit in wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
Especially really bad ones.
I mean, sometimes it's like 15 guys standing there looking at each other and they don't know what the hell's going on. And then Andre the Giant throws them all out.
I have taken some bumps in Dumbo, but
Yes.
they were in my nose.
I dream of taking a bump.
Years
in Dumbo.
ago.
My friend
Oh,
Big.
Ben's talking about cocaine, I think.
Okay.
Not quite my style, but yeah, that's certainly a place to
Remember that guy Keith? Was his name
Oh,
Keith?
of course.
In high school, Evan?
Yeah,
Lived in
of course.
Dumbo?
My friend Big Dog took a bump in the Dumbo.
go. Yeah, I suppose Big Dog did.
Yeah, that shithead. Captain
I grew up
Romance.
with a guy who, one of my best friends in middle school, his mom had this apartment that she had been renting in Dumbo since the 70s that was like converted warehouse space. And she eventually, this is probably, 15 years ago now or more, but she eventually, she was rent controlled and they paid her $1 million to move out of the apartment.
Damn.
And
I'd
it
have
was
took
at
it.
the time the most money, ever given to somebody just to get them to move out of an apartment in New York City.
Where was this again?
Since then, that
In Dumbo.
Okay.
he lived on the block in Dumbo that you have seen in 1 million ads. It's the one block that has this great view of the Manhattan Bridge, and like
Yeah.
you've seen it.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
I know that block.
It's
Is that
on
Front
an ad
Street?
somewhere. Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah. I can't remember exactly which street, but he lived on that street.
Yeah, Gleason's Gym was right on there. Great view, of course. We set up a ring during the Dumbo Arts Festival on that street and did a whole show. I was lucky
Yeah, I was
not
there
to be
for
in the
that.
Battle Royal at that one because that was the what was it? Let me not miss any details. I talked about it on this show before. I believe it was the 90-minute or 2-hour blindfold steel cage Battle Royal that was meant to be an interpretation of the Invisible Man.
That sounds dumb as shit.
This was a creation of, what was that guy? The guy who had a theater
El
degree.
Conquistador, LC.
Yeah, LC. Yeah,
he's a good
yeah.
guy. But he was regretting it by the end, too, because he was in there the whole time. I was on the undercard in a tag match, so that was cool. And then I got to watch it.
Katie, you brought up, we didn't really get to talk about him a lot, but you lamented the big boss man not being a bigger star.
Yeah, he was good at everything he ever did. He was super charismatic. He was the worst when he was a heel. Like,
Oh, later on in WWF in the late 90s when he came back.
yeah. No, I just thought he could have been like an actual like world champ at some point. Not like the top guy. He'd have never been the top guy, but like he could have had like a quick heel run.
I mean, when we were little kids first getting into wrestling, he was a huge star. He was one of the people who was one of the most recognizable wrestlers there was. He did never make it to that world title level, but it was at a
No.
time when nobody did, right? Hogan was just the champion.
That's what Doc said to me.
Yeah, when he first came in, he was a heel and had a run with Hogan, and then that was it. I think one of the real problems is when he went to WCW, they just floundered on him for years.
Didn't he make someone eat their dog?
Yes,
I mean, how heel of a
Al
move
Snow,
is that?
yeah.
You made a man eat his own dog.
that's evil.
That was in WWF. Oh yeah, and then he like interrupted the Big Show's father's funeral and hitched the casket to the back of a truck and drove off with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a real cartoon villain there.
Like I just feel like he could have had like a solid like main event level heel run. It's just it didn't happen. And I get what you're saying that not everyone got that back in the 90s. Keep in mind I didn't start watching wrestling until 2003. But he's the one like every time I watch him in his 90s stuff I'm like, "Okay, why didn't they go with this guy for just a minute?" You know?
Yeah. Apropos of our discussion, he started out as a jobber. I watched some of the episodes of NWA World Championship Wrestling when he's just big old Ray Traylor getting thrown around by the muscle dudes. And I think they saw something in him and switched him to Big Bubba Rogers, to at first being a bodyguard and then eventually being a wrestler pretty quickly after that.
He seems kind of large for a jobber.
Well, you know, when you have guys like the Road Warriors just completely annihilating most jobbers, like you could have a guy like him or Lex Luger, who was a big muscle bound dude, who it's like really impressive that they're able to just manhandle this like larger dude.
Also, he became a really like in shape looking fat guy, but when he first started and he just looked like a sloppy fat guy. It took him a few years to like look like he was imposing. And especially like the way
He started off a level 1 fat guy and then ended a level 30 boss fat guy.
exactly,
Yes.
and there's a huge.
And that's why he's the big boss.
He's
man.
the big boss man, right?
He also did unfortunately die young.
Yeah, he could have had another few more years.
You mean when the Undertaker hung him from the top of the
No,
Hell in a
no.
Cell?
We need to do a big boss
with a
man
noose?
episode.
But also like
That's not when he died?
no, that's not
you
when
know-
he died, Ben. He died.
Usually people die when that happens to them.
It's a work. There was a hook on the back of his neck to keep the pressure off his
Okay.
throat.
Okay.
It's funny you say he started out as a jobber, and they spent all that time building him up. And you know it's funny, he went to WCW, and somehow they just made him a jobber again.
Yeah, incredible.
When he first went to WCW, they made him the boss.
Yeah.
And he was still basically the same gimmick. And I don't know if they got sued or they just decided it wasn't working. They made him the guardian angel.
Didn't they eventually just give up and just start calling him Ray Traylor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
then, then there was a few years of nothing.
Oh, the true horror of WCW is something that will be a multi-part episode that we have not yet subjected Evan to.
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna bring all that to Evan. That's torturous.
That's the point, though.
Wrestling Mania is this weekend or next weekend? When
It's
happening?
this weekend.
Whatever's left of it.
WrestleMania. And before WrestleMania, during the day.
It's Wrestling Mania.
No. Well, sure. But before Wrestling Mania or WrestleMania, whatever you want to call it, Wrestling Cosis, in the morning is the WrestlePosium.
Yes.
At which I will be presenting a paper. You can register at prowrestlingstudies.org. This is the first ever academic symposium focusing just on pro wrestling, and it's online, so it's still happening.
Hashtag shameless
Check
plug.
it out.
Oh yeah, that's what we're here for.
That's right. This is the last time I'll be
Awesome.
plugging it because it's this Saturday. This Saturday morning.
Looking forward to it.
My paper will be at 10:45 Eastern time.
AM.
10:45 a.m. Eastern time before WrestleMania starts.
I hope that when the quarantine's over and we can all freely roam the world again, that you can go and defeat the other philosophy wrestling guy finally once and for all.
Yeah, the showdown's gonna happen this Saturday online.
I know.
But
I mean
yes,
that you can defeat him like physically as well,
which is
important.
in a cage
Yes.
match or something like that.
Yes.
Well, this will be the build up to that. So this will be Act 1 of the story. Two more things. Number one, the Ultimate Warrior should have always just been booked like Goldberg.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Like just squashing people. They did it a little bit. He squashed Honky Tonk Man for the Intercontinental title.
He was a mystery
never
guy
mentioned
that
that.
day too.
And Honky Tonk Man had the title for like almost 2 years. and then Warrior comes out and kills him in like 30 seconds. It's great.
Whoever Honky's opponent was supposed to be wasn't going to be there, and Honky went into the ring and was just like, "Just send anyone out here." And the Ultimate Warrior ran to the ring, did not stop running, and just ran right through him.
Hey guys, remember Santino's honkometer? That was great.
That was funny, yes.
Oh yeah, I was rooting for him to beat the Honky Tonk Man's record. Honky Tonk Man still has the longest intercontinental title reign of all time. But I think when WCW was first booking Goldberg, they probably had that moment in mind with the Warrior, and they were like, "Oh, let's book him like the Warrior, how he killed Honky Tonk Man."
probably.
Everyone loved that.
It would be great.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say it would be great if Goldberg had also had some sort of ridiculous kind of spiritual character where he communed with forces beyond our understanding and then speared you and yelled.
Yeah, unfortunately,
the late
Goldberg's
90s was a lot
null.
more. Yeah, the late 90s was a lot more like no frills.
Yeah.
I think they wanted him to look like
no
as much like
fear,
Austin.
as the T-shirt said.
Right. I think they wanted him to look as much like Austin as possible too, because he was kind of their answer to Austin. All right, we're running out of time. Our listener and good friend Will, it is his birthday on the day we're recording this, April 1st. And he tweeted us his birthday wish, which is that you, Evan Burke, finally admit that you've really liked wrestling all along. And will you make his wish come true?
Man, I'm really sorry that your birthday doesn't mean more to me than the truth. I wish I could make your birthday here, Will, and I wish I could give you what you want, but I respect our fans too much, and I have to be honest that no, never did not care for it previously. Like it a little more now, but yeah,
We'll
still,
take it.
Jury is still out on me liking wrestling.
You hear that? He loves wrestling.
Yeah. Well, we'll tweet it again next year. Maybe we'll get it out of him then.
There we go.
Yeah.
There's a chance. Well, no, because here's the thing. Even then, it'll be, because he's saying that he wants me to admit that I have liked it this whole time, which is that'll never be true. Because even if I start to like it, I will not have liked it this whole time.
Right.
That's the problem.
That will never
Unless
be
like
true.
you go through some kind of psychoanalysis which reveals your subconscious preferences.
Look, Will.
I mean,
to
I also,
include that.
I do still, I mean, I strive to be honest on the podcast, but I mean, I approach it in more, because we're recording this and putting it out into the world, and I want to like bring a positive energy of some kind to the project. I do make more of an effort to seek the things that I like in wrestling and I mean, this is a long-winded way of saying that, like,
You actually hate it more than you let on.
that if
even
it sounds like I'm starting to like really come around on the whole thing, on the entirety of wrestling, that is not the case. Let's just put that to bed. Have I come to like some things? Definitely. Like I experienced actual joy watching Kenny Omega's matches, the ones that were timed reasonably, that kind of stuff. But yeah, but on the whole, jury's still out on wrestling for me.
Fair enough. All right.
So I'm glad you're
wanna
getting
wrap us
older,
up?
Will.
Oh, yes.
Look, Will.
Happy birthday,
Happy birthday
Will.
and stay out of the ocean.
There's nothing for you in the ocean, even on your
It's
birthday.
salty.
And new listeners, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/contestingwrestling. If you want more of this, please subscribe. There is an exclusive Patreon-only episode every week for if you pay us $5 a month. So check it out.
Alrighty, this has been Contesting Wrestling. Follow us on Twitter at ContestingW. Let us know what you think, what we should do next, how you feel in general, how you're doing. We want to know how you're doing, right? We're all having a rough time right now.
Please stay inside.
So,
Don't let us get
Yes.
far enough that Paw Patrol enforces martial law.
yeah, they will stone cold shoot you in the face. They do not fuck around.
They'll shoot you with something that gives you a stone cold stunner. That's what Evan's saying.
Yes.
Damn.
Yes.
Like a little robot.
This has been Contesting Wrestling. We love you. Thank you.